Welcome to Eyes on Southeast Asia, the premier podcast on foreign policy, security, and economic issues on Southeast Asia, brought to you by Foreign Policy Community of Indonesia, the largest foreign policy group in the country and in Southeast Asia. Today, we're going to have a good discussion with my good friend Alexander Feldman from the United States. He is speaking to us from Washington, D.C., and he's the chairman and president and CEO of US-ASEAN Business Council. Hi, Alex. How are you? Welcome to Eyes on Southeast Asia.
Good morning, Dino. Good to see you, and thank you for having me.
How's the weather now in D.C.?
We're mimicking Jakarta, hot and humid.
Well, that's good once in a while, I guess, for Washington. And I really miss Washington, D.C. and all our friends there. So it's really good to see you, Alex.
It's wonderful to see you as well, and I hope we can see each other in person one day soon.
Good. So, Alex, you are the president and CEO of US-ASEAN Business Council. Tell us a little bit about the organization.
Thank you. The US-ASEAN Business Council was founded in 1984, making us 37 years old this year, to help American business grow in Southeast Asia. And ASEAN was a very different organization in 1984. Today, as you know, it's one of the most dynamic regions in the world. And because of the dynamism of the region and the growth of the region, our organization has grown as well. So today we represent almost 170 of America's largest investors and traders with Southeast Asia, with Indonesia, and we do it through a series of committees. We're the only American organization that's written into the ASEAN Charter itself, and that's given us unique access to ASEAN ministerials and to engaging the region not only as a whole, but in each of the 10 ASEAN countries. We've got offices across 7 of the 10 ASEAN countries. The only countries where we don't have offices are Cambodia, Laos, and Brunei, which we still care about and follow closely, but they are the smallest markets in Southeast Asia. And we hope someday to have offices there, but we're in every other market. So that's a quick overview of the USABC, and our job is to help promote American business interests, but also hopefully the interests of ASEAN, and to help promote ASEAN in the United States and get more Americans excited about Southeast Asia.
How long have you been president and CEO of the council, Alex?
I've been here just over 12 exciting years, Dino.
Wow, that's a long time. And you are a graduate of University of Pennsylvania, an Ivy League university that I'm a bit envious because I could not get into that university. And you serve in senior roles in the administration of President Bush 41, President H.W. Bush, and then Bush 43 also. And you serve under Secretary of State Colin Powell and also Condoleezza Rice with the rank of Assistant Secretary of State. So really, you've been around and you've done this and that. And I must commend you. When I was in Washington D.C., I was really impressed by how active you were and how energetic U.S.-ASEAN Business Council in bridging business relations between the United States and Southeast Asia. So let me start with my first question, Alex. How is Southeast Asia seen by U.S. business as a place to invest?
Well, Southeast Asia is, in my mind, the premier destination for American business anywhere in the world. It's got a population of over 660 million people, as you know, and it's a dynamic 660 million people, a young 660 million people that are really tech savvy, mostly using smartphones, but it's one of the most dynamic, I've said that a few times, but dynamic market in the world. And it's poised on the borders of the 2 largest potential markets. And actually, one is not a potential market, it's the largest market in the world, China, and also India. So when you combine the geographic positioning of ASEAN and its great trade relationships with its partner countries, the RCEP agreement is something that we were very pleased to see happen last year. between ASEAN and its plus six partners, including China and India. American business is very focused on the region, and we've in fact invested $338 billion cumulatively in Southeast Asia. So American businesses put our money where our mouth is. And to put that in perspective, because we throw numbers around in the billions in Washington all the time, $338 billion dollars is a lot of money. And it's more than American businesses invested in China, India, Japan, and Korea combined. Let me say that again. China, India, Japan, and Korea combined have less investment from American business than Southeast Asia. So we've been investing in the region for a long time. American business gets it, and we're only accelerating that investment.
Yeah, well, that's it surprised me to hear that actually. So well done. What would be the top three or top five receiving countries in Southeast Asia for those $330 billion of U.S. investment, Alex?
Well, I think Singapore takes the bulk of that, and a lot of that Singapore investment goes into Singapore and then goes out to other parts of Southeast Asia. But officially, Singapore is the leader. Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia round out the top five.
What do you think would be the key trends in terms of U.S. investment in Southeast Asia? And do you think the Biden administration have a solid investment and business strategy in the region?
Well, I think, obviously, given COVID and the pandemic, the digital economy has just taken off, not only in Southeast Asia, but around the world. And certainly our tech firms are paying attention to the region. As I said, it's a young, savvy region. Just over 60% of the population is under 35 years old, making it a key target for and a key market for our businesses, not only digital, but across the board. But the digital companies, our technology companies, are really investing heavily in the region. We are hearing that Amazon and Apple and Google are all making big investments in places like Indonesia. Um, and the tech sector is the fastest growing part of our membership, and our ICT committee that deals with technology issues is our most dynamic committee in the region. So definitely, the digital economy is number one right now as far as attracting interest from American business. But we're also interested in supplying food to Southeast Asia, and some of our leading agriculture companies and agriculture exports are coming to Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is a top five destination for American food and agriculture products. And increasingly, we're developing, combining technology with food. So we've got companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods that are designing meatless, plant-based meats. And all kinds of interesting things happening there. And obviously, the Biden administration is leading a focus on sustainability and clean energy. So those are also areas that our companies are focused on. In terms of how the Biden administration is helping, we're not even a year into the administration, so the jury is still out there. But we're hopeful that they'll get back at the table for trade agreements. We in the last administration we pulled out, never ratified the CPTPP, or actually the TPP at the time, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which became now the CPTPP. We're hopeful at some point we'll get back into that, but I don't think that's realistic in the next couple of years. What is realistic is potentially an engagement on digital trade and possibly digital economy agreements with the region, and we hope that those will start up in the near term. I had a chance to speak to Ambassador Tai. Catherine Tai is our United States Trade Representative just the other day, and I encouraged her to look at this opportunity, both to help the digital economy in Southeast Asia grow, but also help American companies continue to provide great services and products.
Mm. What do you think? What kind of president? What kind of trade president do you think President Biden will be, Alex?
As I said, the jury's still out. They
Mm.
have not really crossed the threshold anywhere. There was talk of maybe doing something with Taiwan this week,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
but that talk came out of the State Department, not the U.S. Trade Representative's office. Um, I don't know. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that they'll
Mhm.
do something. I think the politics will make it harder for President Biden to lead us in a full-fledged trade agreement anytime soon. He's got a very tough midterm election coming up in 2022, which will determine whether he is able to hold on to the House and Senate, and to have the Congress behind his policies, whether he'll have an opposition uh, in Congress, and that is what he's focused on. Obviously, all politics are domestic, so trade is also got domestic roots, and unfortunately, I think we're really going to have to look to the time between 2022 and his reelection to see what kind of president he'll be in trade.
Yeah, but the concept of U.S. foreign policy for the middle class, right? Does that signal that there's still a little bit of America first mindset in how the Biden administration see the world in a different form, but definitely it's all about domestics first, and everything that we do in foreign policy, including trade policy, has to uh, strengthen the middle class at home, right? How do you interpret that? Yeah.
There's a way to walk that tightrope, and as I said, I think the digital economy agreements are the way forward. There's no more
Hmm.
democratic business forum than the digital
Hmm.
economy. Two
Hmm.
guys in a trailer formed a little company called Google, and you know what Google is today. Um,
Hmm.
so it is possible, and I've seen it in Southeast Asia. I've seen it with Gojek and Tokopedia and C Company and all kinds of organizations that started with a very small group of people and grew from there. Grab is in that realm. So there's so much opportunity in the digital realm that I think you can make a very strong argument that the digital economy is in fact for the middle class and helps workers just as and small tech just as much as it helps big tech. So I think there is a way to walk that tightrope. It is going to be tight, but I think that obviously we're seeing the Biden administration through the lens of the Trump administration, and things that would have been just natural before are looking more sinister now. And I think that I think there's opportunity for the United States to walk and chew gum, and certainly having Kirk Campbell in the White House as a coordinator for the Indo-Pacific affairs at the National Security Council is a huge signal that President Biden wants to do that, wants to be able to handle his domestic policy, but also engage the world and specifically engage the countries of the Indo-Pacific where ASEAN lies at the heart.
Yes, yes. Well, all of us here in Southeast Asia see Kurt Campbell's president as the Asia hand in the White House. As you say, is very important move by Biden. I understand you coined the term "bouncing forward" for the post COVID-19 recovery. Can you elaborate on how the council contributes to this recovery process, and also can you elaborate on any specific initiative that you and your members are advocating right now?
Sure, thank you. And I will say that I personally did not coin the term bouncing forward. My colleague Mark Mealy, our senior vice president for policy, first used it in my presence. So I may have taken it and run with it, but Mark
Mhm.
gets the credit, and we think it's really important in the post pandemic time frame, especially as we come out of this latest wave of challenges with COVID-19, that American business brings our full resources to the table and brings our worldwide knowledge of what is happening and how we can bring best practices to Southeast Asia. So we stood up early on in April and May last year. We stood up a COVID-19 economic recovery task force. We were just actually going into the tailwinds of, or not the tailwinds, into the center of the storm of COVID. But we felt it was important to get started thinking about how American business helped Indonesia and Southeast Asia recover, and we knew we were going to recover. So we focused on three pillars, if you will. The first is on health outcomes. Obviously, we've got to get through the health challenges that lead us, and a number of our companies, including Pfizer and J&J, Johnson Johnson, have developed vaccines which are helping immunize the world. And we're looking, in terms of health outcomes, we're looking at specific areas where we can cooperate with the governments of Southeast Asia around vaccine delivery. The cold chain is very important, especially to the Pfizer vaccine, and making sure that that works in Indonesia across the 17,000 islands that make up your country is important. We're also looking at how we help with vaccine confidence. A lot of people are justifiably wary of vaccines that have been developed so quickly, and we will try to excuse me one second. We will try to work with the governments to address the concerns of the folks that have wariness about vaccines, because the best vaccine is the vaccine in your arm, and we hope that we can get as many people as possible vaccinated. We're not concerned about what vaccine they get, as long as it's been approved by the local health authorities. But we really think that the world will be better served, Indonesia will be better served, ASEAN will be better served if we have more people vaccinated. The second thing is, obviously, once we've got the health situation under control, we have to work together to return consumer confidence to the economy, and specifically open up borders to travel again. And I'm excited that Indonesia is on track. I still hope you're on track to open up Bali in July. And
I'm going there.
tourism back. I'd love to be there myself as soon as I can. But we're working on what does that mean? What does it mean to open up, and how does testing and vaccine passports, and how do we address the financial risks that countries will put themselves under by having insurance policies for travelers that ensure that they're covered if they happen to get sick while traveling. How do we put all of these facets together to ensure that the traveler, the country, and most importantly, the people of Bali in this case are comfortable with travel resuming and tourism coming back? The other thing we're concerned about is SMEs, because SMEs and micro and small, medium-sized businesses are the backbone of the Indonesian economy, as they are here in the United States. And we want to do our part to help SMEs and basically bridge the gap between the traditional world that they knew before COVID and the digital world that we find ourselves in now. So we've developed the ASEAN SME Academy, and we're relaunching that, which is a one-stop shop, 24/7 for entrepreneurs and SMEs to get the skills they need to pursue their businesses in this new environment and new world. So travel and SMEs are what we're looking at under returning consumer confidence. And then the last thing we're looking at as a pillar is really how do we recover sustainably, and what can we do together to clean up our oceans, reduce plastic waste, improve the energy sources so that we reduce their impact on the climate and environment, and mitigate climate change. So we've got a number of initiatives around those particular areas that we're working with Indonesia and the rest of ASEAN on. So again, the American business wants to give back at this time of challenge in Southeast Asia.
Alex, you mentioned about the US-ASEAN SME Academy. Where is that being held, or how is that being held?
It's a website that we've done in coordination. It's official ASEAN website,
Okay.
and the URL. If you give me a half a second, I will tell you. Sorry. The URL is ASEAN SME Academy.org. And it's online right now, and you can take courses led by American business in finance and accounting, human resources, management, marketing, the digital economy. And as I said, later this year, we're going to revamp our entire website and actually have it available in Bahasa Indonesia. Right now, it's only available in English, but coming later this year, it will be available in Bahasa Indonesia and hopefully make it accessible across the archipelago.
Okay, good. My organization will be more than happy to promote this initiative. Alex, you deal with a lot of big American companies who operate in Southeast Asia. What can you tell us about the most common complaints by US companies who operate in our region?
I don't like to think about them as complaints, but more challenges that we have.
You don't have to be diplomatic, Alex. You're not talking to a diplomat anymore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Look.
What are these challenges? Yeah.
The challenges or complaints are, obviously around um, good governance, which is a code word for corruption.
Mhm.
Um, we have um, we have a law that prevents American companies from bribing officials, and often that's not followed by other countries. Um, so that good governance is one. Transparency is another. And again, I have to take my hat off to President Jokowi in the Omnibus law for job creation and trying to create an environment that works not only for Indonesian companies but for companies who want to invest in Indonesia from around the world, and addresses some of these issues. Um, we we as American companies really rely on the rule of law, and one of the biggest challenges is how do we resolve disputes when they inevitably come up with our partners and friends in business. So that's also a challenge, and a lot of the court systems um, don't necessarily work as well as we hope they would. So those across the board are big issues. Obviously, you alluded to it earlier that the world is becoming more protectionist.
Mhm.
So we really hope that we can find ways to work together to obviously promote jobs in the United States, but also in Indonesia, and to encourage investment in all countries. So that's the other thing that we're seeing and we're quite concerned about is the development of more protectionist policies and non-tariff barriers to entry, and countries protecting their markets, which is understandable, but I don't think in the end of the day in the best interest of the people of ASEAN or the business environment in ASEAN.
Do you find in some countries governments are very responsive to business, and in other countries you have to really chase them and knock on their doors, what do you call, obsessively before you get a response? Yeah.
Yeah, I have, and the countries that have been most responsive to business have gotten the most investment in recent memory. So, um,
Mhm.
I know Vietnam is a word that we don't like to say in Indonesia so much, but Vietnam has really been responsive. The Vietnamese government has been responsive to business. Over the
Mhm.
12 years that I've been at the council, they come to our meetings prepared. They take them seriously, and not only do they come prepared, but they usually come with solutions or a road to a solution. And we don't always, with Vietnam, get what we want, but we feel like we get a fair hearing, and that they understand our positioning when we go forward. So, um, I think Vietnam is Vietnam is a poster child, probably the best, um, even compared to Singapore, which is often
Mhm.
held up as the best example. But as I said, things are changing in Indonesia, and we've seen dynamic change since we met with President Jokowi in the palace in December of 2019, and he enunciated his vision for the future of the business environment in Indonesia. You know, we've seen tremendous progress not only with the passage of the Omnibus law on job creation, but also all of the various amendments to regulations that go into that. Now, the next step is to see how the bureaucracy handles the new environment and whether they're supportive. But we hope so. We hope that the national government, the provincial governments will work together as envisioned by the law, and that the American business interest in Indonesia, which has always been there, will translate into investments. As I said, we're starting to see those investments happening. We had a huge investment in 2020 by Kimberly Clark, and Amazon's announced
Mhm.
a huge investment in data centers in Indonesia as well in the recent months. So we're excited and hopeful that Indonesia will come right up there with Vietnam and Singapore.
Well, your mention of Vietnam is quite interesting because Vietnam is socialist country, and so is Laos. But Vietnam is much more pro-business than Laos. Yeah. What do you think explains that? Where's that coming from? Yeah.
Well, I think the Vietnamese leadership since Dom Moi in the late 80s and early
Mhm.
90s has understood that moving to a market economy or a market, I don't know if they would call it a market economy, but I will,
Mhm.
is the right direction to move in. And they
Mhm.
saw the benefits that China had when it started opening up after Deng Xiaoping
Mhm.
did his famous Southern tour and made a statement about uh, it didn't matter whether the
Yes.
cat is black or white as long as it caught mice.
Mhm.
So you know, I think Vietnam is sort of looking at China as a model, but taking it further, and has realized the benefits. I mean, it's really you've seen. I've been going to Vietnam since 1994, and I've seen that country transform in terms of quality of life, not only in the cities, but across the countryside as well. And people just are healthier, living longer, and have better, higher paying jobs, and are able to provide for their families in a way they.
Yeah, and what I find interesting also, Alex, as a political scientist, United States had war with Vietnam, right? It was just war; it was bloody war, right, for a long time. Uh, but it's just a testament to how pragmatic the Vietnamese are. That Vietnam and America are now strong economic partners, as if the past never happened. In some other countries that would not be so easy, right, given the that history between two countries. But Vietnamese are not just fierce warriors, but they're also really special skillful entrepreneurs. Yeah. And now they are economic warriors, and really good at it as well. Right? I mean, would you agree with that?
I would agree with it, and I'd also add that Vietnam, like the rest of Southeast Asia, is very young. So while certainly the leadership remembers what happened in the war with America, the younger people, many of them don't have any direct memories of that
Mhm.
period of time because they weren't born yet. So I
Mhm.
think that it is remarkable, given
Mhm.
how much of a stain that war was on Vietnam and on the American psyche.
That's true.
And you know, the fact that John Kerry and John McCain and others who had very harrowing experiences during the Vietnam War, including John McCain and Pete Peterson being locked up in prison in Hanoi for years, were able to put aside those memories and find a way forward. So I take off the hats to leadership on both sides for being able to get beyond the war and find a way forward. And I would also argue that not only economically are we stronger partners, but geopolitically, we're also much closer than we ever have been.
Yes, I think it shows that both of your countries have a forward-looking attitude. Maybe a reflection of this bouncing forward thing that mentioned earlier. Alex, you mentioned also about the steps undertaken by President Jokowi to boost the Indonesian economy, and you mentioned also about the positive response to the Omnibus law that was produced by the Jokowi administration. Can you elaborate more on how U.S. businesses see the Omnibus law that had just been enacted by the government? Yeah.
I think that two things. One, it's a really important signal to the world that Indonesia is serious about business and open to engagement with the world economy and the economy, the businesses and companies from around the world. So I think just as a signal, it's important. But when you go down into the details, it really makes doing business in Indonesia potentially a lot smoother and better. The licensing, the registration process is now housed in the new Ministry of Investment. Um, and that in itself is going to make things much easier. One of the biggest challenges I heard from our members in practically doing business in Indonesia is that you could come to an agreement with Jakarta and the national government, but then you had to negotiate three or four more times with the provincial government and the districts in which you operated. And this law and the implementing regulations really help to streamline that. The other thing it does is it opens up opportunities for investment. You've gone from a negative investment list to a positive investment list, and the number of areas that are formally excluded from investment from foreign business has been reduced. And I think that opens up a huge opportunity for world-class businesses to come in and serve the people of Indonesia and provide great services and great products in areas where it was much more difficult in the past. And so I'm optimistic about that as well. So there's this is a very complicated law, and there's a lot. The regulations are also equally complicated. As I said, the devil is in the details and how it's actually implemented. But on the surface and from a signal point of view, it's a very positive step, and I think you're going to see more major investments. And I mentioned Kimberly-Clark and Amazon. Both of those investments are the billions of dollars. So these are real significant investments in the economy and a vote of confidence in President Jokowi and the direction he's taking Indonesia.
Good to hear that. Alex, from the business perspective, what sort of business advice can you give to both governments and business players in Southeast Asia, especially if our region wants to stay in the global supply chain?
Well, Dino, this is a wonderful opportunity right now. The geopolitical tensions between China and the United States are continuing under the Biden administration. And I think we've learned under COVID, not only in China, but in other places, including some places in Southeast Asia, that having diversity in your supply chains is critical. So Southeast Asia is poised to be the big winner coming out of COVID-19, coming out of the tensions between the United States and China. And I would advise governments, as President Jokowi has done in Indonesia, but so have others in other parts of Southeast Asia, to really focus on how you can make your country more attractive to these supply chains, ensure that your borders are open and that there's ease of doing business, and where appropriate, there are incentives to attract and differentiate your country from the others in the region. And as I said, I know President Jokowi put together a cabinet level task force to look at omnibus laws and the changes that ultimately resulted in the omnibus law on job creation. but so did Prime Minister Prayut in Thailand, Prime Minister Phuc at the time in Vietnam, and President Duterte in um, the Philippines. So that's you've got competition in Southeast Asia. So the challenge is how do you differentiate? And I think Indonesia is well on its way to doing exactly that. And I'm a big fan, and Indonesia's always been, as the largest economy and the largest population in Southeast Asia, has always been at the top of our focus list. But I haven't seen as many companies in the past as interested in actually taking action and investing and developing local offices and local investments. So I'm hopeful that that's on the cusp of changing with this new law.
Okay, good. Alex, since COVID-19 in Southeast Asia, there has been some occasional uptick of economic nationalism, right? In different parts and in different time. How do U.S. businesses see this? I mean, do you see this as something worrying, or you see this this happens all the time? It will calm down after a while, and how do you see this?
Well, we take it seriously, Baldino. It is a major impediment to growth in the region. We understand why countries might head that direction, and certainly in the United States under President Trump, we very vocally headed in that direction. But these barriers that are put up to protect economies, I think, do the opposite. And American companies, one of the things that I think is important to think about when American companies come in is, well, we invest and we invest in our people in the country. So the goal for most American companies in the onset is to ensure that a couple of years down the road, Indonesians are running the business in Indonesia. And ideally, Indonesians are running the business in ASEAN and beyond. And we want to give our staff opportunities to grow and to grow an understanding of other markets. So I think it's very important to understand that we want to grow as local businesses. We see ourselves as local stakeholders, and while we have American roots, we care about the people, and most of our companies have robust corporate social responsibility or corporate engagement policies that give back to the communities that we operate in by supporting local schools, local infrastructure, healthcare, and often beyond.
Alex, whenever I have coffee with my friends in Kadin or go to business schools, they ask, do U.S. companies find it easier to do business in socialist countries or democratic countries? Right, and different people have different answers. What would be your answers to that?
Well, that's a great question and a tough question to answer. But I find that American businesses are quite agile and they adjust to the circumstances. I don't think one system is easier or harder to do business than the others. It really comes down to the people, the leadership, and how they interact between the government and the business community. But certainly, uh, we have a bias in some ways to democracy, and it's we understand democracy from firsthand. At least the leadership back in the United States does, and where possible, we want to support democracies, but democracies can also be messy and um, can see laws come up that are populist in nature and protectionist more easily than more authoritarian regimes. So, and also, business loves stability, and democracies aren't always stable. So it's a challenge, but I think you'll see American companies everywhere, and I don't think you're going to see it's really a matter of what what political system a country has, but certainly the folks back in headquarters have a slight bias towards democratic countries, but they also want stability, so they want to have their cake and eat it too. Not always easy.
I mean, the number one rule is where they can make the most profits, right? Where they can grow their business the most. I guess that's true for all businesses. But is it true that American businesses are more legalistic than, say, Asian businesses? Yeah,
Absolutely. We have a culture in the United States that's all about contracts. It's less about relationships that are very important in Southeast Asia. And you didn't mention, but I had a decade-long career building businesses in Asia.
that's true. 10 years, right? Yeah. Hmm.
10 years, yep.
Hmm.
And I experienced this firsthand. American contracts, tend to be detailed. And when we did, I was at Star TV in the mid '80s, and we did a merger with ESPN and Star Sports. That merger was 17, as I remember, 17 volumes uh, long. The legal contract that set that up, just the documents, would fill the windowsill of a very large room. Whereas in Asia, traditionally, if it's contracts are being done between countries in the region, the contract will be much shorter and to the point, and a lot of it will revolve around the relationship between the executives. So yes, we tend to put everything down on paper. We think that that's a way to avoid potential misunderstandings down the road. Um, I think there's a halfway point in between the two. That's probably the perfect medium. But we tend to be on the side of over uh, litigating and over uh, legal thought.
And the other questions I usually get from students of business and political science is that the U.S. government always backs U.S. businesses, and of course, you expect them to do right. What government would not do so? But I mean, to what extent, uh, you know, you see this happening on the ground? Yeah. From your experience, yeah.
Right. I think, American business tends to, appreciate the role of government, but where possible, minimize it. We'd rather do business to business.
Yes.
But for
Yes.
very big projects and very big investments, or when things get more tricky and other governments are involved, the role of the U.S. government becomes very important. And we think that's important. And as you said, it's natural. It's what the U.S. government should do, and it's what the Indonesian government should do
Yeah.
with backing their companies. Doesn't mean the companies are always right, and certainly the American government tries to ensure that they're backing companies that are on the right, at least from our point of view, on the correct side of an argument. But it is an important relationship, and obviously when we're doing business across borders, and when you're doing business with state-owned enterprises and other government-controlled industries, it's important to have the G to G dialogue as well as the B to B and the B to G dialogue.
Yeah, yeah. You know why I asked this, Alex, is because in Indonesia there was a very strong perception that U.S. interest in Indonesia is driven by the interest of Freeport, right? I have good relations with Freeport, and that matter has been resolved, right? But this public perception on the ground was so strong, and I keep telling them, look, yes, of course, the U.S. government, support U.S. businesses, but to say that their agenda is driven by the interests. To make Freeport win their business in Indonesia. That's just wrong.
Yeah,
Is that
Freeport's a
yeah?
member, and
Yes, yes,
they're a great company, and like you, I'm very cognizant of um, the role that they play in Indonesia. They're one of the largest
yes.
taxpayers. They've got a very
Mhm.
visible investment in Papua. It's one of
Yes.
the biggest mines in the world, and but
Mhm.
I can tell you that both from being inside the U.S. government and over the last 12 years in this job, that the U.S. agenda in Indonesia, from the U.S. government perspective, was not driven by Freeport, but perceptions become realities on the ground. So it's important to address those perceptions, and try and find a balanced way forward. But certainly Freeport is one of the largest investors in Indonesia. Their voice is heard by the Indonesian government as well as the U.S. government.
Yeah, and there is a happy ending to that story, by the way, because the government and Freeport has reached an agreement. And to tell you the truth now, those what do you call it, perceptions or misperceptions has actually died down. I haven't heard much about this in recent times. Uh, Alex, you talk about U.S. businesses being very committed to anti-corruption law, right? Does this make the terrain more difficult for U.S. businesses because others are not playing, but there are others who don't play by the same rule, and it would make it harder to compete in a terrain where people play with by different rules. What's your comment on this?
Sure. The Foreign Corrupt Practices Act is I think, a great thing for American business, because it clearly states the boundaries of what we can and can't do. And I think, corruption really is a net negative to the overall economy. And there are hopefully other ways, and I realize why corruption sometimes peaks its head, that government officials aren't paid what they should be. They can't make a living wage. And, I'm sympathetic to that, but as an American business leader, it's just a non-starter that we will have the option of getting licenses, or moving a business forward by paying someone under the table to make decisions in our favor. So I don't think it's something that holds us back, but certainly it can mean that we lose contracts and we lose
Yes.
business.
Yeah.
But
I've by the way, I've always I've always argued, by the way, at FPCI, that U.S. investments is good for anti-corruption drive, because when the U.S. invests, you can be sure that the only thing they're afraid of is their own anti-corruption law, because no matter how high you are, or how rich you are, how powerful you are, if you are proven to violate your own anti-corruption law, they can go to jail, right? And no CEO wants that to happen, right? Alex, this go ahead.
I was going to say, the fines have become increasingly steep for violating this law. So we've seen the fines going into billions of dollars now. So that's also another impediment. But it's also interesting, and is good for your listeners, is that the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act not only applies to American companies, but companies that have significant American interests as well. So a lot of the companies that have been persecuted under this law are actually based in places like Europe and Asia these days. So make sure you understand, if you've got big investments in the United States, what that means for your needing to follow this important law.
Yeah, Alex, there's quite a few local leaders, local governments that are listening to this podcast, and I've helped a few companies do business in provinces in Indonesia, and some of them don't have a good experience because the local government or local leaders sometimes don't know how to treat foreign investors. For example, in some areas in Indonesia, I'm sure in some parts of Southeast Asia, the first instinct is, how do I milk money out of these companies, instead of how do I make these companies make money so that they get a good reputation and my area gets a good reputation and more investors will come, right? So what would be your advice to the local leaders, provincial leaders, who want to get foreign investors and who need to do the right thing to attract them? Yeah.
Well, I'd advise them to talk to Ambassador Dino Patti Djalal because he has all the secrets. But if
Yeah.
you can't do that, which I think most of them can,
Hmm.
I would ensure that you're thinking about it, as you said, in the right way. So you want, as a local leader, you need to create jobs for your community,
Hmm.
and investment, especially from the United States, can help do that. And
Hmm.
not only does that investment come with employment, but often, as I said, it also comes with the corporate social responsibility ethic that we have to give back to the communities in which we operate, and work with empowering your women, or helping SMEs, or uh, building a school. So there's a lot that can happen if you can attract foreign investment. And obviously, it goes back to what I said in the beginning of the challenges. If you can create an environment where you're operating with good governance, where you're transparent about your rules, regulations, taxes, and other policies, where you can provide a good reason, a good uh, argument for why foreign companies, including American companies, should come to your province or town. Um, these are all reasons why uh, you will succeed. And obviously, getting out and getting to meet people is a huge opportunity. Working with the Indonesian embassy in places like Singapore, working with the U.S. embassy, with organizations like CADIN and the US-ASEAN Business Council, all help to ensure that the opportunities in your local district or province are known in a wider format, and we can get the word out across the world. And certainly places like West Java are getting a lot of attention these days, as is Central Java, because of the president. Um, so there's opportunity, and I'd say work with folks that have the visibility on what's happening on the outside, and follow best practices. And certainly the omnibus law on job creation should help alleviate some of the tension that exists between the central government in Jakarta and the provincial governments and district governments.
Yeah. In other words, U.S. business want things to be not complicated, easy when it doesn't have to be hard. Yeah, and also, I suppose you don't like your investment to be politicized, right? Because I've seen that happening. I mean, obviously, Freeport is one case, but there are other cases where they invest and then it becomes a political issue, and that's a bit hard to swallow, I guess, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's yeah, I totally agree.
Alex, what do U.S. businesses see as the main competition in Southeast Asia? I'm thinking of China. Is that who you look at in terms of your main competitor, or not necessarily so?
Well, I think we look at a market by market
Hmm.
approach, and sometimes our toughest competitors are American counterpart, or
Okay.
European. It doesn't have to be China. Um, you know, we as Americans are confident in our products and services, and we believe that on a level playing field, in a
Hmm.
transparent market, that
Hmm.
we will compete and win because our services are the best, and our products are the best. However, to your point, um, where it matters um, is in the competition for hearts and minds and thought, and ultimately policy in governments, and in developing that marketplace. And there, Chinese companies and American companies operate under different systems, and we believe that um, if the American system is in place in our policies, we want the system to be open to all competitors, including Chinese. Often it's not the same on the Chinese side, and they do business, as you said, very differently from Americans, and we'll have to see who and what wins, but that's where the battle is for uh, competition in the development of policies and rules and regulations for doing business and ultimately creating the economic environment which companies work in. And that's certainly an area where we see China as a competitor.
Mm, okay. Uh, Alex, last question. When I was growing up, and I guess we're about the same age, right? I don't want to reveal your age to the audience, but when I was growing up, the world cultural and business icons were predominantly American, right? Coca-Cola, right? Levi's, KFC, McDonald's, rock and roll, and so on, right? So when you thought about what was hip and cool, and everybody would know about, it would be American symbols, American cultural icons and symbols. And obviously that helped American businesses a lot, right? Do you see that being different today? That it's a lot more crowded, and the American cultural icons or symbols are less dominant as it was before.
Well, I mean, maybe not as dominant, but I still think that America's got some of the best brands and services and products, and certainly if you look at what we've got, in Indonesia between Disney Plus and Netflix, yes, those are great iconic American brands that are delivering local content and promoting Indonesian film and television development. So I think it's a great. What's happened, I think, is great. I think it's great that you've got Gojek and Tokopedia combining, and that they're going to go on to be a dominant force, hopefully in Southeast Asia. You've got Grab, you've got lots of local tech businesses, Lazada, C Company, all these companies that are growing and growing regionally and beyond, and developing their own unique set of products and services. So I think we can again walk and chew gum at the same time. American products, I hope, aren't going away. I think we're going to continue to develop great products and services. 20 years ago, you would have never thought of Amazon or maybe even Google as we were, as iconic American brands. Um, Today, we're seeing Tesla come up in the world, and Tesla is one of our most recent members of the US-ASEAN Business Council, and we're excited about their presence with us. They're opening up their first showroom, I think, or the first business in Singapore, and looking beyond Singapore as well. And so I take your point, Dino. And I think it's great that there are brands and there are products and services and businesses that are rivaling American brands in Southeast Asia. But I also think that, and I'm biased, but America is one of the greatest countries on earth, and that we will continue to innovate and to give great products, services, and brands to the world and to Indonesia.
Yes. Well, thank you for that, and absolutely, I think American brands are still going strong, and they're still going strong, except in a more crowded market where other brands are emerging from. Local brands are emerging quite strongly as well. So it's very interesting landscape. And Alex, I want to thank you for being here with us today, and thank you for your leadership. And I know you're a good friend of Indonesia, of Southeast Asia. A lot of our ASEAN friends know you and respect your good work, right? So please say hi to all our friends in Washington D.C. And I hope you come see us in the region anytime soon, especially after all these lockdowns and COVID crisis is over. Right? So thank you, Alex. This is a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Dino. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be with you this morning, DC time, and we're grateful for your leadership through all sorts of positions that you've held, including at the Foreign Ministry and as ambassador to the United States. but also all you've done to get the United States and Indonesia and ASEAN closer. I just leave you with one final thought, and that is, I truly believe that ASEAN matters to the United States as well as to the world, and that you live in one of the most dynamic and fast-growing regions of the world that American business will continue to serve. So thank you for giving me this opportunity, and I wish everybody a healthy and safe day forward. Thank you.